Hi, this is Richard Stepp. This is my story of playing with the Northwest Company band I played with for many years. I was the drummer and songwriter, singer in that band also. This is the story about a gig we played with 10 years after up in Edmonton. I'll tell a lot more about the Northwest Company trips we did, non-stop driving to Edmonton and back and staying in a motel just to shower. But anyway, 10 years after, here's the story that I wrote out about it. It was the summer of 1972 when our band, the Northwest Company, performed at Clark Stadium in Edmonton, Alberta, with 10 years after, the famous band from England. Rita Coolidge, the Flying Burrito Brothers, the Whackers, and the Northwest Company were the acts booked on the show. It ended up Rita Coolidge and the Burrito Brothers didn't show up. I can't remember if the Whackers did, but Gowan, the bass player from the Northwest Company, said there was a band played, but he couldn't remember who it was. He thought it was another Edmonton band, so the Whackers, I'm not sure. But I do remember, I think it might have been Willie and the Walkers. But anyway, the bands that did play were 10 years after. Country Joe, he was a solo. It was from Country Joe and the Fish, but he played solo. The Northwest Company, The Seeds of Time. Oh, it was Willie and the Walkers. That's who it was, yeah. Went on to play in Powder Blues later in his career. He was a really good piano player. So the Whackers was a different band, but they didn't play. The only other band was Flash Cadillac and the Continental Kids. They were like played old-time 50s music. It was a beautiful sunny day in the hippie psychedelic era, was still in full swing. The Northwest Company was at the height of their career, and we were a very hot trio. All three of us sang original songs, and we were very accomplished on our instruments. We used 100-watt Garnet amps, and our sound was amplified through a large De-Ong sound system. I was one of the best drummers around at the time. I was great with double bass drums and could do fast rolls on them, and performed wicked solos. If you go onto YouTube, you can hear the Northwest Company live. You can hear my drumming on there. I wasn't afraid of any other drummers, and I was in the league of the great rock drummers. I'm not bragging because it's true. I used to practice like you wouldn't believe, and I was really well respected. Everybody was so disappointed when I quit playing drums and switched to guitar because I could have went on to be with anybody, I suppose. Ray O'Toole was a fantastic guitar player in our band. He could solo for hours. Also a great songwriter. And Gowan was very aggressive, badass bass player. Used distortion and fuzz on his bass, and he could match anyone. He really held the bottom together, the bottom end of our band together. And Gowan was a great songwriter too and singer. He was very different. We had a house on Patterson Avenue in Burnaby, BC at the time, and it was the greatest. We had this really neat house with the five of us living in it, and the five of us. We had the manager and four of us, I guess. The manager, Ronnie Graham, Ronnie Tomato, we called him. And down the street was Scotty Bergstrom, who owned Moose Valley Farms, who put that concert on up in Edmonton. He was a promoter. Anyway, we all lived in that house. Ronnie Tomato Graham was a real character in his own right. Scotty Bergstrom from Moose Valley Farms. He put on rock concerts all over Western Canada. He was responsible for the Edmonton show. We were like a big family with a lot of followers back in those days, including beautiful girls. And I was one of the best dressed rock stars in the world. I had a girlfriend from 4th Avenue that made me gorgeous clothes. They were custom fitted with beautiful embroidery all over. Unfortunately, I threw a lot of them away in later in my life when I was breaking up with my first wife, Lisa. Wish I would have kept them. Her name was Terry McConaughey. She went on to be very famous clothing designer for big rock stars like Elton John, Rod Stewart. She now has a company with a lot of employees designing her close for movie industry and has many successful movies to her credit. But she used to live at our house for a little while too, up in one of the closets. But she would sew for hours and custom fit all my clothes. I was dressed so good. Anyway, it was a beautiful sunny day. Everyone was in a great mood, all the beautiful people. One thing I remember is we performed twice that day. We did a short set to start the show. To delay the concert that day, Scotty from Moose Valley Farms wanted some time for Flash Cadillac and the Continental Kids to show up because he had to shuffle the acts because Rita Coolidge canceling. Later in the day, we played our regular time with the other acts before 10 Years After came on and performed. We did a great set that day, really rocking the place. Earlier in the day, we had played a few ballads, which I loved. One was called Sunshine by Gowan Jorgensen, our bass player. Another one by me called It's a Beautiful Day Today. And I'm Your Guy, probably did that one too. On the later set, we performed some of the songs we used to play. An old World War II song Gowan's dad taught us called The Dirty Boogie. We used to jam that thing for 20 minutes at a time. Played it to a boogie shuffle. It went on 20, 25 minutes, who knows. We used to get the girls to take their tops off or anything else. It was in the days of Wreck Beach and all that, taking part in the middle of the song. And we'd sort of get the boogie going. And those were the days. It was the era of free love, nudity, Wreck Beach, the Vancouver nude beach. I used to go to Wreck Beach all the time. And I went down there with 5 girls one time. They were, 16, 17, 18 years old, who knows. I remember that. It'll never get any better than this. Anyway, I know I was in perfect shape back then, too, because of playing the drums. We were in the thick of it and would shock the prairie crowds because they were not as hippified as the West Coast at the time. In the middle of the song, we got a lot of people in the crowd to start shedding their clothes. And there were a lot of topless, beautiful girls there. I was in such great shape from drumming so much. I had long hair, I guess a mustache, beautiful custom embroidery clothes on. So I took my top off to encourage the crowd as they cheered me on. So then I took off the rest of my clothes, which left me playing the drums naked, which I'm kind of embarrassed about nowadays, but we didn't wear any underwear at the time, custom pants. The crowd went wild. I remember, I can't remember if I played the rest of the set Balls to the Wind or not, but sitting down behind the drums covered the family jewels pretty much. When we finally finished the set, I guess I dressed again and we came back and played an encore, and we went to the dressing room. We did an encore, probably did the African song or Policeman's Coming. That was a big jam song. I'm a bit embarrassed about it now, but it must have been quite a sight, and I was in my physical prime. There was also a picture of the show in the Edmonton paper the next day with the Northwest Company playing from the back. You could, with me playing the drums. I wish I had a copy of that paper. Probably could see my bare ass. Lindsay Mitchell used to tease me. He was from the Seeds of Time and Prism. He used to tease me for years about shedding my clothes. But I remember the Seeds of Time took a picture with their clothes off too, promo picture. They were buff naked too. But those were the times. We performed one of our best, longest songs too, called Policeman's Coming, which I would play my signature drum solo with ferocious double bass drums. And I could do these rolls, and I could do these other things where you hit the snare, or you hit the tom, one tom, next tom, bass drum. So I could get that thing going like crazy. When we were in the dressing room, there's another memorable part. We had already played our set and our encore, and we were drinking and celebrating. Gowan from the Northwest Company, Jeff Eyre, he was from one of the other bands, and Country Joe were singing some songs. Gowan was playing Country Joe's expensive Yamaha acoustic. We knew Country Joe from a concert we played with him at the Memorial Arena in Victoria. 10 Years After came in, and we started talking together and having drinks. Then they went over and sat down to tune their guitars over and go over their set list to start getting ready to perform. I remember we kept talking and partying, and their manager came over and told Gowan and Jeff and Joe, Country Joe, to shut up while Alvin Lee and the bass player Leo Lyons tuned their guitars. We couldn't believe they didn't even have a tuning amp. They used a tuning fork or a harmonica and then stuck their ear on the other instrument. I can't to get the original note. I guess they used a harmonica, I think, or a tuning fork. Then they put their ear on the guitar stock to hear the note, to tune their guitars. I thought it was unusual, but I guess it worked for them. They didn't really have tuning machines back in those days. And when it's noisy, you can't hear the notes, but I just remember him thinking, I thought, gee, that's funny, they wouldn't have a tuning amp or something. But we were partying away, I guess. They played a great show 10 years after. Alvin Lee was a fantastic, playing very fast licks and singing great. The drummer Rick Lee and the bass player Leo Lyons were also superb. The band played great together. It was a real special day. I can't remember what we did after the show. Probably partied. We were. I think we were taking LSD and everything back in those days, of course. Smoking dope. We might have driven all the way back to Vancouver. We used to do that. We did a show in Edmonton with Crowbar and Mash McCann once, where we drove all the way from Vancouver to Edmonton, had showers somewhere, played the show at the Field House, I think it was, and then drove all the way back to Vancouver with no sleep. We got a call in the afternoon in Vancouver to go play this concert, and we got in the van, packed the van, drove all the way up there, and we took some LSD on the way, and we were drinking beer in the truck too on the way up, and then we had our shower and played the concert and drove all the way back. We also had two roadies at the time, Jim Pentland and Kenny McCall. Kenny went on to be a famous singer around Vancouver. He's a really neat guy. There was 7 of us in the Ford Econoline van towing a trailer. What an experience. Those were the days. Talking to Gowan about the concert, he informed me that occasion we stayed at a motel, and I took groupies back to the hotel with us after. Apparently I got up early to drive my gal home. Gowan thinks I wasn't so enthralled in the morning after sobering up. When I went out with her to the van, the tires were flat for some reason. I had to change them before I could drive her home. After hearing this, I guess it was the Crowbar Mash McCann show we did in Edmonton, where we drove from Vancouver, played the show and drove all back in one haul. Whew. That's the end of that story, folks.